understanding between Hope and the COP? And what is the status of that memorandum of understanding? What is the relationship between the Congress of the People now? Because there's a new political leader, and this particular alliance.
And there is no relationship because what we've publicly heard is that they do not want to have any um, alliance, whatever you want to call it, um, to do with hope. I met with Mr. Prakash Ramarao personally. And, if that's their choice, you can't compel, force people into a union. And, we shook hands and said goodbye, as it were. You want to go along a different path that doesn't involve hope, doesn't involve the NTA, then that's your choice. So the COP have, I think, a meeting coming up. We're not there to dictate the path that other people should take. And if we were surprised, that without any forewarning, we found that here we had a memorandum of understanding and COP walked away with it from it. Possibly because they had a new leader, I presume so, and he had a different vision for his party. I imagine that will emerge in time. And so, we're not vexed with the COP because you've chosen a different path. But we were surprised that this happened without, any interface. We heard about it in the media.
And what of the response by the leader of the parliamentary opposition, Mrs. Kamala Persad-Bissessar, in respect to a letter that Mr. Steve Alvarez would have written to her, inviting her to this launch on March 12th. And he referenced Bob Marley's One Love, One Heart. But she responded by saying, we've asked questions such as, when do these parties have internal elections? Are their executives elected by membership? What are their registered membership? What is the geographical spread of their membership? What human, financial, and technical resources do they possess? How many people applied for seats? Who are members of their screening committees? I mean, it's a lot of questions for you to answer. But are you in a position to respond this morning to
Sure.
any of those questions, or
Well,
even to the opposition leader?
yeah. So the first thing that I would have to say is we've never heard those questions. We had been invited to meet with the UNC. You remember that we'd invited to meet with a political leader. That did not happen, and we said that we the way there were some miscommunications. That can happen, but we're available in the new year. So the new year has started, and that was part of the reason. In fact, the letter, I must tell you that you say Steve Alvarez wrote the letter. I wrote the letter. Steve Alvarez spoke to the media about it. I wasn't available at all during that day, so I presume that's why they contacted him. But nonetheless, it was the preamble, if you like, to that invitation was that they invited Hope to come and meet their political leader. It said that we couldn't make that particular meeting for whatever reasons. We think the miscommunication came from their side, but I'm not, that's not a big issue. And so it is in that context and reciting that preamble that we said, well, here's an opportunity to meet. We're having this meeting. We didn't ask her to participate in the meeting. When we were off here, you reminded me that Mr. Louis Leasing attended one of the UNC's platforms where they talked about crime. And you were concerned, how come has he moved parties? He has never moved parties. But he thought that as there was an invitation out to the general public to attend these events, to participate in them. And it is in that context he was there. And so if you put this whole question of the invitation of the UNC in that sort of configuring that kind of element. That is, that's a context for the invitation that she chose. It would appear from her response that it really was an attack on Gary Griffith. Perhaps we didn't realize that the venom with which the political leader of the opposition holds Mr. Griffith, but it was quite apparent. The invitation didn't come from Mr. Griffith. It did not, he wasn't part of that. He wasn't mentioned in it, in the invitation. But her attack really was against Mr. Griffith. And all those questions she may have asked the other persons in the coalition of interests, but she never asked it of Hope. We know nothing about that. And certainly, I don't know if the general public, if those parties have addressed those issues that Mrs. Bissessar put before, that is now mentioned in that context.
I am following what is also coming from Mr. Griffith, and as you said, Mr. Griffith is someone who is usually at the forefront of conversations as it relates to national security and matters involving the CTPS. He's very vocal about it, but he also has been quite vocal in respect, and it seems to be becoming more personal. Uh, what seems to be a public dispute between himself and the opposition leader. Is that something that concerns you or this particular coalition going forward? That we're moving away from the politics itself. We're moving away from the issues affecting Trinidad and Tobago, and there perhaps is a bit too much focus on personal politics.
Yeah. So outside of the personalities, which is really where I started saying, look, this meeting is focused on policy. We're not focused on belittling some other party or some other politician, because there's a Trinidad and Tobago to be saved. And to be saved, what I've always held is that if Trinidad and Tobago is to move in another direction, then you need a critical mass of people to follow a single vision. You can't get 100% of the people, but unless you get the people, who acclaim a policy, a vision as to how you want to move forward, then you're going to get this pulling and tugging, and so that Trinidad will always be in a state of eruption, if you like. And we need to move away from that. Jamaica did exactly that. When they hit rock bottom, they realized the parties on opposite ends of the spectrum that had criticized each other recognized they had to come on a common policy platform. And they've succeeded very substantially in the way that they've, for instance, to give one example, is that debt to GDP ratio has significantly come down. Nobody believed that Jamaica could in fact do that. But discipline, hard work, focused, and the fact that there was a united effort. So every time, to bring your debt to GDP down to reasonable levels, it means you have to cut expenses in some particular area. But you never saw the opposition keep bashing the whoever is in power because of that. Understanding that the road forward required a certain discipline. And in fact, so that is what, if you like, that the People's Alliance seeks to bring to the table in the form of the two parties, NTA and Hope. And I say that, and I mentioned earlier that the combination of the two brings one of the vital things that without which you can't transform your economy, is to bring security under control.
So, to be fair to this morning's conversation, I'd like to give you a platform to speak to viewers in relation to this particular alliance's plans and their preparations for the upcoming general election. With reference to the example of Jamaica, again, I understand that, but adding context to that, the IMF has had programs in Jamaica as well, and there's always been a fear of the IMF in Trinidad and Tobago. There's just been a picture that has been painted of the IMF being a big bad wolf, but we put that aside for now. But talk to us about the alliance's preparations for the elections. I mean, other parties have indicated that they've either presented candidates or they've completed their screening process. What position could you speak of hope, as well as the NTA this morning, in fielding, well, are they going to field 41 candidates?
All right, sure, and that's a fair question. So we are in the process of screening right now. Post that particular meeting on the 12th, we will be starting to announce the constituencies and the candidates who will represent. So yes, that's our rollout in terms of what we think the timing should be. As you know, the NTA have already identified constituencies, candidates for a number of areas in Trinidad, and we've collaborated together in relation to that issue. We've been, as I mentioned, meeting for some 9 months now. It just hasn't happened overnight. So yes, that will emerge. I know that's what people want to hear when it comes to election time. If you asked me in terms of when the election will be, which is really the trigger for when you can't, we certainly couldn't sustain a campaign, a marketing campaign for over a very long period. That's a very costly exercise. And therefore, you have to try and gauge when the election will be held in order to ramp up your marketing to suit that. One point, of course, you will know is when the election bells ring, Parliament is paroled. But so to do that and that ramping up this is a starting point, and we start to roll out things like candidates. Why I would suggest, I would imagine, I don't know, of course, nobody knows for sure, that if you do have a transition of prime minister happening later this month or early next month, is it mid next month? We expect to see by the 16th a new prime minister, according to all the events that have transpired so far. One would think that the new prime minister would want a settling period of at least 3 months so that people, they have marketing to do too. And they have marketing with a new prime minister coming in to the picture. And therefore, I don't perceive that the election will happen before September. That may be, I guess, somebody may take you by surprise. And I'm not saying that is not impossible, but that would be my
Is
conjecture
it that you're
of how we
hoping that
should.
there isn't an election before September because of the need to ramp up the campaign of the alliance?
Sorry, I didn't follow your question.
Is it that you're hoping that there isn't an election until September or before September?
Yeah, so that's why we do have to, in terms of marketing our approach, some parties have unlimited resources. That's good for them. Um, but if you want, you want a focused campaign of, let's say, 3 months, and therefore when the election will be held, is crucial to, therefore, when you start that campaign to roll out. And we've said, therefore, towards the end of March, a lot more will emerge post this meeting in March, on the 12th of March. The Ides of March, you might tell me, um, is a
Now,
very
I'm aware
provocative
that
date.
again, and not that I'm rushing, because there's this launch as you indicate. We will learn a lot more following the launch. But earlier you also spoke about common common interests. You spoke about the NT and Gary Griffith in respect to national security and hope on everything else. that doesn't seem like a balanced relationship at all. It seems as though NTA is just focusing on Gary Griffith for national security. So, but Hope has made available policies on their website. You've educated me in our last conversation, and you
Thank
told
you.
me it was completely wrong to say that Hope hasn't had policies. You even sent me the link to the website, so it is available there. But in respect to the policies heading towards the general election, there is an alliance now. There's this interest. Who's leading this alliance, and who's leading policy formulation in respect to this
All right.
alliance?
So, yes, so there's a joint, we are going to have, we've initiated a leadership council. So there's room for many persons. We understand that. And it is in that process, the marketing of the various policies will emerge. Yes, I make the point that, and I think Gary has a super important part to play, because without getting this nation on a secure footing where people feel secure and therefore business feels they could invest in the country, then nothing else works. And that's why it's so important. So you may tell me, oh, that the percentages sound different in what I'm putting forward, but that's not the point. You need that first component, or else nothing else works. And we think we have the best partner in that context to bring a secured nation within which other policies can now take a foothold and start to work and start to make the change. So it's not that they take place one at a time. It is, a common, and all these things have to roll out fairly simultaneously. But you should have the early sight of what will happen in terms of security very early in the game, unless within the first 6 months you've read the people experience a new sense of peace and security in Trinidad and Tobago, then it won't happen. I'm not saying you bring down murders to zero or anything like that. I'm saying people have to have a feeling, you know what? We feel more secure. We think that we have gangs under control. And that 6 month window is, if you fail to do that within that first 6 months, it's unlikely, not to eradicate, it's unlikely to happen, later on, which is why 9 years later, we don't believe that the PNM have any chance whatever
Well, Miss
of
Smith,
dealing with
I,
crime.
I understand that. Do you think that you have a chance in the election? Do you think that, do you truly believe that yourself and other members of this alliance genuinely have a chance in the upcoming election, notwithstanding what has transpired in the last 9 years, but also in recognition of voting patterns and voting habits amongst the population?
All right, so and that's a fair question. I think Trinidad and Tobago is ripe for change, but really, you ask the question you're directing really seems to have as its genesis whether, in fact, this alliance by itself could form the government. And we've said from the very beginning that the fact is that if you win, let's put numbers on the table, if you win as little as 5 seats, then neither of the other parties will be able to form a government without a coalition. So you then have a choice. You either go back to have another election, or in fact you sit down and you work out. And Hope feels and NTA feels that we will be part of that equation in terms of working out how we form a new government in a coalition arrangement, a real coalition, a coalition that has been, we've learned from past experience that a coalition that really can work is that one that takes place after an election. Ethiopia tried a pre-election coalition. It did not work out certainly the way COP expected it to work. And so that is the aim. Yes, it would be great if, in fact, we won 21 or 22 seats. But initially, that, and politics are very dynamic. When things start to snowball, you can find a whole different. That's what happened with the NAR. The NAR didn't start up their process. I think it was 6 months before the election. So things can dramatically change. But initially, if you took an objective stance, if you took a hard-nosed look at it, yes, we feel we will form part of the next government, but not necessarily be 100% of the government. And we think that is a reasonable expectation at this point.
I think I usually refrain from sharing my personal opinion during these conversations. That's for another platform and talking point. Um, but if my knowledge is up to par and my brain is working properly, it's not even as many as 5 seats. It could even be 2 seats in Trinidad because you have it seems as way at this point a two-way fight in Tobago. I don't know if Hope or NT are planning to focus on Tobago, but you've got the TPP versus the PNM in Tobago, and so it could be as little as 2 seats in
Yes,
Trinidad
yes,
that will
I
lead
just
lead to that
mentioned, yes,
conversation.
I agree with you.
You know,
2 seats can make
yeah.
the difference. Right now, the margin is, what it was 23, it's now 22 versus 19. That's a very tight margin. And if you lose 2 Tobago seats, all of a sudden things look different. If you lose 2 more to the People's Alliance, then you are going to have a coalition going forward. And the thing about a coalition, is that it means that different strains of voices get to be heard. Here we have is all or nothing, as it were, and you shunt the other party. If coalitions start to become the norm in Trinidad and Tobago, as it is in the norm in Europe, for instance, then what will happen? You won't get the sort of vicious politics that we have right now, because you can't be, you know, going after a party, and attacking them, attacking their policies, and 1 month later say, "Can we meet and make a deal?" And so you asked about the one love thing, but that's a message you were sending, that unless, and I mentioned earlier, unless you get a critical mass of people, and that's 75% of the people willing to go on to journey following a particular direction, the push and pull will never allow you to succeed when
Mhm.
you're being dragged
Mr.
down on
Smith,
the other side.
we are more or less out of time. Very quickly, though, very quickly. Could you state any of the constituencies in particular that Hope is focusing on? As you mentioned, NT has already put custodians across certain constituencies. In respect to Hope, could you state, any particular constituencies that they're looking to contest?
So, I mean, among them, there's San Juan Barataria. Among them is Tunapuna. I mean, I'm not telling you these are specific, but you asked me to name some. Um, the three Digger Martins, Port of Spain South, Laventille, Laventille West. Those are constituencies mentioned, as it were. I'm not putting them higher than that. So that.
Well, at least you've given us a hint. Let's put it that way. Samuel Smith, thank you very much for your time this
Okay,
morning.
thank you for having me.
Always appreciate your presence, of course. And we await to hear further following the official launch, it would seem, or the first public meeting of its kind with the People's Alliance on March 12th. So thank you very much. All the very best to you.
Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing WESN there to film the
Certainly, we
events.
certainly we hope to be there to cover all the news that comes from this conversation is to be had. But all the best for now. So take care.
Okay.
Keep
Thank
well.
you. Thanks very much.
Bye bye.
No doubt we'll be talking again. Have a good one.
You too. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break here on AM Prime. Stay with us. We've got some more conversations to get into after this.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I'm Naomi Macnish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Homemade shotguns linked to hunting trip murder. Commissioner of Police denies probe into suspended top cops' finances. National Security detains 4 alleged gang leaders. And court rules trade minister violated fair hearing rights. Now for the details. Police have found 3 homemade shotguns believed to be connected to the fatal shooting of 28-year-old Dylan Maharaj during a hunting trip in Labrie. Maharaj was shot on February 21st in a forested area in Wesn and later died at the Point Fortin Hospital. Officers recovered the weapons along a dirt road off the Archibald de Leon Highway and arrested a man from Mont Desir Road, Rousselac. Investigations continue under Sergeant Suratan of the Labrie Police Station. Acting Commissioner of Police Junior Benjamin has refuted claims that the White Collar Crime Unit is investigating the financial records of suspended Commissioner of Police Earl Edward Christopher. Speaking at a media briefing, Benjamin dismissed the reports as false and urged the media to be more responsible. Edward Christopher was arrested in connection with the procurement of 2 sniper rifles on January 30th, but was released without charges. The police also denied reports of a missing laptop linked to murdered attorney Randall Hector, stating that all evidence is in their possession. 4 men suspected to be key figures in organized crime have been detained under the special orders signed by National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines. Emmanuel Mano Bowens, Justin Spooky Gomez, Joven Bob Gomez, and Francis Frano Despot are accused of involvement in violent crimes, including murders, arms trafficking, and retaliatory attacks. The detentions, based on intelligence reports, are aimed at preventing further criminal activity. The men are now being held at the Eastern Correctional Rehabilitation Center in Arima. The High Court has ruled that the Minister of Trade and Industry failed to establish a lawful appeals process for businesses challenging decisions by the TT Laboratory Accreditation Services. Justice Kevin Ramcharan found that Kaizen Environmental Services was denied its right to a fair hearing after TTLAS suspended its accreditation. The court ordered the state to compensate Kaizen for financial losses, which include $200,000 in lost earnings per month and loss of major contracts. A hearing to determine damages is set for May 26th. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi Macnish. Thanks for watching.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website, fanzonett.com, to make your purchase today.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and, I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploiting the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
let's go to the last part.
Welcome back to AM Prime, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with us this morning. So Carnival, well, we're in the midst of Carnival. Of course, it culminates with the big festivities, starting from Fantastic Friday, which is tomorrow. But with that being said, though we love to jump up, whine, wave, and dance all over the place, you also got to look after yourself. Health-wise is one thing, and we've covered topics on health for Carnival. So your physical health is one thing, your mental health is another, but your personal safety and security, you have a responsibility as well. And to remind us of that during this particular period of madness and bacchanal, I'm joined this morning by ASP Christopher Arun. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the early morning shift. Welcome to the early morning programming on WESN.
Yes, thank you very much, Keaton. It's great to be here. Good day to you and your staff and your colleagues, and good day to Trinidad and Tobago, the viewers.
ASP, thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning. We were reminded by the Gold Commander for Carnival 2025, ACP Richard, that Carnival is not all that we need to walk the streets with our heads held high after the festivities. Now, the TTPS, we're in the midst of a state of emergency, so there's heightened TTPS operations. But in respect to the TTPS and Carnival operations, exactly how has the state of emergency impacted upon that? How is the TTPS approaching Carnival different in 2025?
Well, of course, it hasn't always been that we had a state of emergency during the Carnival period. So this might actually be the first time we have a state of emergency during a Carnival period for a number of years. What it does, it brings enhanced policing strategies and methodologies to the front. So what the police usually do, the roadblocks and the exercises and the patrols, you normally have joint army patrols between Christmas and Carnival period. Now you actually have more exercises and more roadblocks to for preventative measures and also to infiltrate alleged perpetrators' locations and gangs and whatnot. So you're going to see more policing geared towards gang-related activities, not just Carnival. So you have the Carnival, yes, we have duties concerning Carnival, but you're going to see enhanced policing towards and geared towards gang-related activities and violence. So that being said, we wanted to ensure that members of the public, especially viewers, understands that their responsibility during this period, the work that the police will be endeavoring to conduct, and their responsibilities. And the members of the public should understand that they have responsibilities that are wide-ranging. And the first one, the most important one, is the responsibility of themselves, taking care of themselves in terms of their health and security. And when we talk security with individuals, individual security, we're talking about understanding your position in society and as a member of society, a member of a household. So you're not just leaving the household to come back to nothing. You're leaving the household to come back to people, your loved ones, people you care about, and people in your community. And it's important that you take care of yourself and treat with security very clearly and responsibly when you venture out into the public domain. And that being said, in terms of Carnival, your personal safety is important. So when you leave home, ensure that you're well aware of your comings and goings and where exactly you're going to be going. Let other people know where you're going to be. And during the Carnival period, you're going to go to fetes, you're going to go to limes, you're going to go to parties, and you want others to know your whereabouts. Not because it's not their business, it's not their business and they should know, but you want them to be aware of, and in case something happens to you, people would be aware of the last place you were located. You can simply use your apps on your devices and share your live locations with persons who care about you and who you care about. If that's not what you want to do, again, be safe. Venturing into the public domain, you can move in groups. You can move, park in well-lit areas. You can ensure that when you drink alcohol, you take care of yourself not to drive. So make sure you have a designated driver or use services, taxi services that are available to you. I myself, I was telling one of the colleagues that we went to the Fiesta, myself and other colleagues and friends, we went to Fiesta Saturday. I don't drink alcohol, I drink cranberry juice. So we went to Fiesta, I drove. The others had their alcohol beverages, I drove. I was responsible to take them and to bring them back. We all parked at one location. We took one vehicle, and then we went down to the Fiesta. The Fiesta was excellent. People were enjoying themselves. They behaved responsibly. There wasn't any aggravation. There wasn't any violence in any way, form, or fashion. And it was an excellent event. And I want to implore members of the public to similarly address how you traverse the nation roadways. You're going to see increases in fatalities, in accidents, in RTAs, road traffic accidents, especially around this time. People are
as we are already seeing, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and you're going to see that because people driving under the influence of alcohol, narcotics, and they are tired. And what we want, and as an individual taking responsibility for yourself, and you want to monitor how much alcohol you intake, you also want to monitor the type of drugs that you might want to take in terms of recreation. Marijuana now is a recreational drug. It's decriminalized to some extent, and persons are using it. But you have to understand that it could also hamper your ability to drive a motor vehicle to some extent. And with that being said, other persons we've actually recognized that persons are taking on hardcore drugs like cocaine, heroin, and they are popping pills. And these allow individuals to render themselves to assaults, sexual assaults, robberies, and they find themselves in situations where they wake up maybe a day or two later not knowing exactly what occurred. And they may find it necessary for recreational purposes. But we are warning members of the public to take heed in terms of your drug use. It is still illegal to use most narcotics, and we would be out there looking for such narcotics. We understand that the police have discretionary powers when it comes to you using marijuana in a public place, but it's still illegal to use marijuana and possess it in vicinity of schools. And although it might be an aggravated possession, the laws don't cater for that in Trinidad and Tobago. You could still be charged with trafficking narcotics, including the marijuana. So I want persons to be careful in enjoying themselves out there and taking responsibility for themselves as individuals. Be careful who you line with. Be careful who are the persons you surround yourselves with, because we are seeing gang violence extending to people who live in hotspot areas, and they're lining out the road on the culvert on the corner with other members of the community in hotspot areas, and you have to take in heed to this as well, because what we're seeing drive-by shootings. We're seeing persons coming and shooting up the area, and a number of persons are being victims to these shootings and murders become stats when it comes to murders and whatnot. One person to be careful who they associate themselves with. So take heed and responsibility in terms of who you are lining with, who you are partying with, and what. In terms of your property, be careful of using your property openly. In terms of make sure that you have very a lot of control on your devices, your jewelry, your cash. Make sure it's always within your view at all times. And if you could limit the amount of jewelry and cash you walk with on the road, that is important, because we are seeing robberies geared towards persons with valuables on them. So I mean, some people don't like the cashless society agenda that they think that persons are pushing. But what we recognize is that the less cash and valuables you have on you, is the less vulnerable you are to being victimized for robberies and larcenies and whatnot. And it's not really necessary when you're going out there to party and line on that kind.
Well, ASP, one of the things I'd like you to speak about is to remind people about the laws as it relates to, okay, everybody wants to participate in carnival, but we also have responsibilities. So you can't just leave your home and say, okay, I'm locking it up and I'm leaving my kids at home.
Right.
Please speak
Yeah.
to the nation about that, because that is an issue. That's a problem.
Right, it's a major problem, especially around Carnival and Christmas time. What we recognize, and we also know that at times people would like to drop off their elderly relatives at certain institutions while they go and party and whatnot. But it's even more important that you supervise children, as children are rendered supervised by responsible adults. So you cannot leave a child in the care and custody and being taken care of by another minor or somebody who's incapacitated. So somebody who's so elderly or so unwell that they're unable to take care of that minor, you can still be held liable under Section 4 of the Children's Act 4601 for the offense of cruelty to a child. And cruelty concerns abandonment, it concerns assault, it concerns mistreatment of a child, ill treatment of a child, and it's very wide ranging. The Act speaks to the harm or actions that tend to cause harm to a child. So your inadvertent method of having a child supervised would affect how you can be liable to an investigation and charges under Section 4.
In relation to, would you say that, I know you mentioned that, just now you mentioned the charges. Would you say that that is also a form of abuse?
Of course, and that's what cruelty to a child speaks of. It's abuse. So some people might consider abuse to be physical, emotional, but in itself, leaving a child to see about themselves, or minors to see about minors, or incapacitated adults to see about minors, in itself is abuse. We've actually had cases where homes have burned down and children have died We have cases where children have drowned. There was a case before the court, a child drowned in a barrel of water because the parent left them unattended and went down the road for whatever reason. We actually charged persons. I remember the other day, last year, I think, we charged a lady for leaving her minor children, very young children, to run in the pharmacy and come back. And it was reported to us, and we went in. We had to go into the home and rescue the children. So it is a form of abuse. We may not consider it abuse. You know, a long time you could have left children unattended because there was an elderly child in the home and whatnot. This wrongs. It's unacceptable, and you can be held liable for it.
Just to stress the point, this is not only for children. As you said, this could be for elderly individuals who need extra attention and extra care as well.
Well, the laws of Trinidad and Tobago does not cater for elder abuse. So where in some jurisdictions you have laws that cater for child abuse and elder abuse, in Trinidad and Tobago, unless it's an outright assault upon an elder, there is no offense of elder abuse in Trinidad and Tobago. There is the Ministry of Aging that tends to look into these reports and refer to us in case there are cases of physical abuse, aggravated assaults, and what.
Now, in respect to moving forward and TTPS operations this carnival, I know usually every year the TTPS gives us the reassurance and stated that they are well prepared. I don't expect the TTPS to speak about all their operations, but we will see a high police presence, of course. What about interacting with a police officer? As you mentioned, there are a number of individuals who could be heavily intoxicated.
Yeah.
They might not necessarily be aware, but in respect to interacting with a police officer, what are some of the rules or some of the things that they need to abide by? What rights do the officers have? What powers do officers have when it comes to dealing with these individuals? Are they allowed to stop anyone? Are they allowed to search anyone? Are
Yeah.
they allowed to apprehend anyone? Especially noting that we are in a state of
Well,
emergency and there are emergency powers in
right.
place.
So based on the state of emergency now, the police officers on the road and in the public domain have the lawful right now to stop you and search you and detain you if they need to. Outside of that, it's okay to approach a police officer. It is expected, especially around carnival time, that persons would be intoxicated and they would be using alcohol and whatnot. There is the prohibition of glass bottles in place. You can be arrested. The penalty for possessing a glass bottle in and around carnival events is $1,000 and I believe 6 months imprisonment, right? So, and it is a summary offense according to the Police Service Act, Section 46(2). The police officers have the authority to arrest you for a summary offense committed within their view. So, just the mere possession of a glass bottle at a location. Remember, carnival time, Port of Spain, San Fernando, Rima, boroughs will be having carnival events, especially on Monday and Tuesday. And police officers would be within their rights to either take you into custody or release you with a warning. So they can warn you. They have discretionary powers. If you are smoking near a police officer, they can use their discretionary powers to warn you and allow you to leave. Right? You can be arrested. You cannot be arrested for like smoking cigarettes and whatnot. But again, if you are consuming narcotics in the vicinity, especially marijuana, in the vicinity of a school, the police officers can arrest you. They may not, especially as it's carnival time. Schools are closed, so they may use their discretionary powers to just warn you and allow you to leave.
Let me just clarify something. I understand the point about schools, but given that marijuana has been decriminalized, and this is something that has confused me a bit. Please clarify. You can still
be charged
smoke marijuana in public.
Yeah, I believe so. I understand it's a ticketable offense, but you can be charged if it's in the vicinity of a school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's very difficult to understand.
Whether you smoke it or not, possession in itself. So if you're in possession of narcotics, including marijuana, in the vicinity of a school, you can be arrested for trafficking of the marijuana or narcotics within 500 meters of a school, right? Smoking marijuana or any narcotic or exposing any minor to narcotics is also charge. So under the Children's Act 4601, child to narcotics, which includes marijuana, it's still a drug. You can't be charged for exposing a minor to narcotics. So if you need to smoke marijuana, make sure it has no children in your home.
SP, before you leave, there's one more thing I'd like you to cover because this is a problem in the sense that you can't stop it. It's something we've associated with Carnival, and it's quite unfortunate that you can't stop it. It's just a matter of there not being enough facilities.
Right.
But still, the laws of Transbago dictate that you are not allowed to urinate in public. Am I correct?
Correct, yeah.
So in relation to Carnival, though you can't stop it, you can't remind people that
Police don't
they
gonna
still
arrest
shouldn't
you.
be doing that.
They may not arrest you for, but again, they have discretionary powers when it comes to obscene language, the smoking and the narcotics, the obscene language, the smoking, the urinating in public, littering, whatnot. They have discretionary powers that they can just warn you and allow you. They have never.
SPS, sorry to interrupt. I think what you're getting at is, yes, we have laws, and yes, we will police you, but we still want everybody to try and have a good time.
Yeah, exactly. So the police may not arrest you, but they can warn you for the for urinating in public, because you would expose yourself to members of the public by urinating in public, and that in itself is a charge. So under the Summary Offences Act.
Well, ASP, I want to thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning for reminding people about the laws, but also about personal safety and personal measures that they can adopt. Of course, I know that you have been very active and you will be active over this particular
Of course,
period.
I have.
So
all police officers have been detailed to conduct carnival duties during this period.
Well, best of luck to you and to your team and to all TTPS officers during this
Hopefully,
particular
we'll see
period.
each other out there. I'll be on the side of the street in probably uniform and whatnot, and you'll probably be partying on the street Juve morning. I guess you and Ryan.
Probably, you never know. Yeah, Ryan, definitely Ryan. I think that definitely you will definitely see Ryan, and if you do see him, you'll still hear his voice.
Right.
ASP Arun, thank you very much. All the very best to you.
All the best to you. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, ASP Arun joining us this morning. Just to remind you of your responsibilities as a citizen when it comes to security and your personal security and well-being. And we thank him for that, of course. We all want to participate, but we tend to forget as well that there are things that we still need to do, and there are measures that we still need to adopt. The TTPS is doing their part, and they have given their reassurance once more that they are prepared for Carnival, and they have put measures in place to ensure that we have a safe, hopefully uneventful Carnival when it comes to criminal activity. There are certain things that you can do to help yourself. So secure your possessions. That is always a bit of a concern. Please secure your possessions and secure yourself. Now, I know that you might not want everyone to know where you are starting from tomorrow. So you might not want to share your location on WhatsApp. But it's always good to share your whereabouts and your well-being with a close confidant. Just, as I said, personal safety practices. But enjoy it. Have fun, stress away, stress-free. And, of course, calm down and cool yourself when Ash Wednesday comes, time for you to do some self-reflection. But ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, that is it for AM Prime. On behalf of my team in studio this morning, Ryan Gomez-Burke and Josh John Alexander, we thank you very much for your time and, of course, your presence in ensuring that AM Prime happens. To our guests for joining us this morning, thank you very much. And to you, the viewer, for which AM Prime, we wouldn't have an AM Prime without you. So thank you very much for continuously contacting us, for giving us suggestions, for reaching out to us and sharing your opinions. And please feel free to do such. You can call us throughout the day. Naomi is usually there. She's very happy to talk to you. Or you can just pop us an email, amprimewesn@gmail.com. Reach out to us anytime. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm Keaton Shaw, reminding you today is a good day to have a good day. I'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Framework saying security guarantees, which have so far not been mentioned by Donald Trump, are an absolute necessity for any deal.
We are preparing for negotiations this Friday, an agreement with America, support for our state and people. Guarantees of peace and security are the key to ensuring that Russia no longer destroys the lives of other peoples. I will meet with President Trump. It is important to me and to all of us in the world that America's aid should not be stopped. Strength is needed on the path to peace.
Zelensky may have better luck getting security guarantees from Europe. He's been invited to a special EU summit in Brussels March 6 to discuss those possible guarantees for Ukraine. Well, Donald Trump's first month back in the White House has been marked by soaring friction between Washington and its European allies. The U.S. has not just abruptly changed gears on support for Ukraine. Trump has also been threatening more tariffs. And speaking Wednesday, his hostility toward the EU was clear.
The European Union's it was formed in order to screw the United States. I mean, look, let's be honest. The European Union was formed in order to screw the United States. That's the purpose of it. And they've done a good job of it, but now I'm president.
The European Commission, meanwhile, was quick to respond to that, saying the EU is the world's largest free market. That's been a, quote, boon for the United States. Well, later this Thursday, the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, will sit down with Donald Trump at the White House. His visit coming just a few days after French President Emmanuel Macron met with Trump to try and boost U.S. relations with the European Union. Ukraine will be top of the talks agenda. Our Brussels correspondent Dave Keating told us more.
It will on this central point of European countries needing a U.S. guarantee to put their own soldiers in Ukraine to enforce any peace deal that is worked out between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Emmanuel Macron stressed that as well in his visit to the White House on Monday. Those European leaders who have said they are willing to put their own troops in Ukraine, which is not all of them, have all had this caveat with it. And they're saying basically they need that U.S. security guarantee to keep those soldiers safe. And as Keir Starmer said on the plane ride over to the U.S., to make sure that Russia doesn't invade again. In other words, they don't think that the threat by European countries, if Russia were to attack the peacekeeping forces that will be in Ukraine, that Vladimir Putin wouldn't be scared of attacking them if there's no U.S. guarantee, because he wouldn't be scared of a war with the European Union and the UK, and that he would only refrain from doing that if the United States had Article 5 protection on those troops, because then Russia wouldn't want to risk a war with the United States. Now, for his part, Donald Trump, yet again in this televised cabinet meeting last night, said that he would not be willing to have America guarantee that security, that the Europeans need to take care of that. Although he did have some vague language on that, which might signal some kind of opening that would be more that would be less black and white than his Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told the defense ministers here at NATO 2 weeks ago. So that message is for sure unified. The question is, and the question that both he and Macron have not yet been willing to answer, is whether they would be willing to put those troops on the ground in Ukraine if the U.S. firmly rules out any kind of guarantee for defending those troops should they be attacked. I think everyone realizes that there's no possibility of U.S. troops being on the ground in Ukraine. So ahead of that meeting, we saw Starmer kind of buttering up the U.S. president, saying kind of without any evidence that Donald Trump remains firmly committed to NATO, that the special relationship is in great shape. I think he knows that's not the case. Anyone watching that knows that's not the case, but he needs to say that to try to prevent this meeting from really going off the rails, because these two men's personality are very, very different, and this meeting could go very, very badly today.
Dave Keating in Brussels. Meanwhile, in the United States, a school-aged child has died after contracting measles in the southern state of Texas. The boy was unvaccinated at the time. The measles outbreak is spreading rapidly there now, with more than 130 cases across rural Texas and neighboring New Mexico. Health officials say more cases are expected. Now, this was America's first death from measles since 2015.
We were confident that we'd eradicated measles from the United States and had really gotten to a point where we just didn't see these kinds of outbreaks happening. Obviously, that has changed over the last 20-something years, and so we do see outbreaks more frequently, but that is related to how much we're vaccinating our population. When we think about vaccine-preventable illnesses, they're only preventable if we have adequate vaccination rates. And as we see those rates start to decline, across the nation, then we'll see more outbreaks.
Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman has died. Hackman, his wife, and their dog were found dead in their New Mexico home on Wednesday. Police are investigating the deaths, but have reassured locals that they don't believe there's any danger to the community. The 95-year-old Hackman was a 5-time Oscar nominee, winning twice, 21 years apart, for The French Connection and then Unforgiven. He starred in dozens of films and was one of the industry's most respected and honored performers, playing in action movies, thrillers, and even with a comedic turn in Young Frankenstein. Well, we're going to talk more about Gene Hackman's death and life now with Olivia Salazar-Winspear from our Culture Desk. Olivia, Gene Hackman truly had an illustrious career. I mean, tell us a bit more about some of the highlights.
Well, as you mentioned, Jeannie, in a career spanning more than 50 years, he had time to pick up some prestigious awards, 2 Oscars, 4 Golden Globes, 2 BAFTAs, and plenty of nominations. Now, the films he won the Academy Award for, Best Actor for his role as Jimmy Popeye Doyle in William Friedkin's The French Connection, action thriller from 1971, and he won Best Supporting Actor for his role as a villainous sheriff in Clint Eastwood's western The Unforgiven in 1992. He was also, much earlier, at the very beginning of his career in 1967, in Bonnie and Clyde, the Arthur Penn film. He played Clyde's brother. He played an FBI agent in Alan Parker's Mississippi Burning much later, so you can see his roles were often sort of action thriller cop. He really carved out a niche for himself there and became a really respected character actor in the American New Wave cinema, which stretched into the 1980s, starting with Bonnie and Clyde in the late 60s. But as well as these action roles, he also played the much-loved villain in Superman, Lex Luthor, of course, in the late 70s, the first one, and then the sequel into the 80s. He was often found in strong ensemble casts. He's played alongside many of the greats from Hollywood. For example, The Conversation by Francis Ford Coppola in 1974, which won what is today the Palme d'Or. It was the Grand Prix then at the Cannes Film Festival. He's really well known for acting alongside some massive names, but stealing the scene himself. Even if he doesn't have lots of lines or a pivotal role in the film. He actually started his career in the theatre in the early 1960s, but what I thought was a fun detail, when he was training at the Pasadena Playhouse in the late 50s, he befriended another aspiring actor, totally unknown, Dustin Hoffman. And about 10 years later, in 1967, Hackman was meant to play Mr. Robinson of The Graduate, the Mike Nichols film of the same name, where Dustin Hoffman plays the young man having an affair with the older Mrs. Robinson. And Gene Hackman got involved in the rehearsals for a while. He was preparing for the film, but Mike Nichols eventually fired him for appearing too young, and he cast Murray Hamilton instead, so they could have played alongside each other. Obviously, it wasn't too much of a setback because Gene Hackman's career really did flourish in the 1970s and 1980s, where he did most of his important work.
He certainly did, and he certainly marked U.S. cinema, and he kept working well into his 70s. I mean, he had a bit of a resurgence again in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that's right. He in 2001, he charmed a whole new generation of film fans in Wes Anderson's The Royal Tenenbaums, where he plays the penniless patriarch. Royal himself is a hilarious character, a perfectly cast role, I think. Hackman got to show off his talent for sort of understated, deadpan humour, delivering his lines with a real charisma, while also being very endearing, because the film obviously sees him wanting to get back with his estranged wife. He had another comic turn in Heartbreakers in 2001 as well. Sigourney Weaver and Jennifer Love Hewitt starring in that, so 2 different generations to appeal to there. And as he eased into retirement in later years, he co-wrote 3 historical fiction novels. He also wrote 2 books alone. The most recent one was a crime thriller called Pursuit. And he had been suffering from ill health for the last 15 years, with heart problems in particular. But I suppose what we can say today is that he does leave behind 3 children and a great body of work in American cinema.
He certainly does, Olivia. Thank you for that look back at Gene Hackman, who has now died aged 95. Thank you so much. It's time now for our number of the day with our business editor, Charles Pellegrin, who joins us on the set. Hi, Charles.
Hi, Jeannie.
What's our number?
That number is $1.5 billion, as in $1.5 billion. That's the value of all the digital assets that were stolen from the Bybit cryptocurrency exchange. And this amounts quite simply to the largest ever crypto heist in history. And now the FBI in the U.S. is formally accusing a North Korean group of being behind this heist, calling on crypto vigilantes to help freeze the stolen funds before they get laundered and converted into actual currency. Tune in at 1:15 p.m. Paris time for more.
You are watching France 24. Don't go away. Last December, the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime was widely celebrated across Syria, but also in neighboring countries that had become home to millions of Syrian refugees for more than 10 years. While Assad's departure revived hopes of a return from Iraqi Kurdistan, where almost 300,000 Syrian Kurds still live, mostly in camps, the question of the Kurds' place in the new Syria is not yet clear. They have high expectations of the negotiations with Damascus, though at a time when a union's taking shape between Kurdish political groups who've, until now, been divided. For France 24, here's Josh Vardy, Marie-Charlotte Rupi, and Stella Martani.
Kilometers north of the capital of Iraqi Kurdistan, Erbil, lies Kawagos camp, home to around 1,800 Syrian Kurdish families. They all fled northeast Syria in the chaos of the civil war. With the fall of former President Bashar al-Assad's regime, they now have renewed hope of returning. A decade in exile, but nobody's forgotten life back in Syria.
We brought them from Syria when we left. The photo albums hold all our memories we have left of Syria.
Ayaz and his family lived near the town of Kamishli in northeast Syria. He says he fled to escape both compulsory military service in Assad's armed forces and forced recruitment into Kurdish factions.
In the Syrian civil war, you were faced with two choices: kill or be killed. So I made the best decision, or at least the safest, to leave Syria.
Ayaz has closely followed the aftermath of the fall of Assad with a mixture of hope and concern.
At the moment, the situation is not good at all in Syria. I want to return to Syria if we have a civil state, a state protecting the rights of all its communities, constitutionally, and not just with words. We want the Kurdish areas to have a kind of special status, a decentralized state.
Kurdish people see this decentralization of power as a way of enabling them to defend their languages and culture through local representation by elected Kurdish officials. But so far, the new authorities in Damascus have been opposed to this, arguing instead for the promotion of a centralized state. This is one of the reasons the camp's inhabitants are not rushing to return to Syria.
People don't know what to do until they understand the situation, until there's a new president in Syria and we can see that Kurdish rights haven't been forgotten. Unless Damascus says that Kurds have equal rights in Syria, we cannot return.
To get their demands heard by Damascus, Syrian Kurds know they must present a united front. But some people here are wary of the PYD, the Kurdish party at the head of the autonomous authorities in northeast Syria, and its armed factions, the YPJ and the YPG, reputed to be close to the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, which is in conflict with Turkey. Here, people are closer to the Kurdish National Council, an ally of the party at the head of Iraqi Kurdistan. Instead of a totally autonomous region, they prefer a form of federalism in which the Kurds could govern the provinces where they're in the majority. For several weeks now, the capital of Iraqi Kurdistan has been at the heart of negotiations between the two political factions after more than a decade of infighting.
From the moment things changed, there has been a need to unite the Kurds. In order for us to ensure our place and existence in the new Syria, since we own Syria just as much as the others, the PYD is an authority. They have established an administration alongside the Syrian National Army. But as a new Syria is being built, these administrations all over the place in Syria won't be accepted by the central government in Damascus. But how do we ensure and secure rights for ethnic groups and communities? That's what we are working on.
Recognition of Kurdish rights in Syria is of particular importance to some of the families in the Kawagos camp. They're part of what is known as the Maktumin, the unregistered, descendants of Kurds removed from the national registers in 1962.
President Nazim al-Qudsi issued the Black Decree, as we call it, ordering a census in Hasaka only for one day.
The official aim was to administrate the population of this territory, but after the census, much of the land was reallocated to Arab families. Around 70,000 people became Maktumin, stateless in their own country. Being absent was enough to be erased from the registers.
They were deprived of all their civil rights, including the right to own property, to study, to register themselves, and to buy anything. They were deprived of everything.
In 2011, faced with revolutionary uprisings, Bashar al-Assad tried to buy calm in the Kurdish regions by regularizing some of these Makhdumin. But families like Mazlum's did not benefit from this move. The only documents he has today that prove his identity are his asylum papers and a document from the Mukhtar, the village chief, certifying that he used to live in Syria.
The government recognized his paper back then with the Mukhtar stamp. It's a document, but we're not allowed to use it to move around.
Without an official family registry, his daughters do not exist in their birth country. The regularization process is expensive and requires him to live in Syria for at least 6 months. He fears that the change of government in Damascus will further complicate the situation.
They don't meet to discuss this issue. They're focused on bigger problems now. It's difficult. We have barely any hope. It's better here at the moment. We can't return to Syria now. If we go back, we can't move freely. And if we go to non-Kurdish areas, we might be imprisoned. We've been given a residence here in Kurdistan, at least.
His concern is that one day the camp will be emptied of its inhabitants and he and his family will find themselves stranded. For now, nobody is going anywhere as the Turkish are still bombarding the area. They're also waiting to see how the talks will play out.
France 24, a different point of view.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.
I'm Paul Rees, covering stories from Sweden for France 24, live from Stockholm and on France 24 news programmes.
Paul Rees, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.